The harmattan came early that year. The sky turned pale and heavy with dust. The air grew dry and brittle, cracking lips, whitening skin, and carrying the faint smell of old earth. Every morning, the village woke to a veil of haze. Leaves fell like brittle paper from the trees, and the world felt thinner somehow, as if it had stopped breathing fully. In Okezi's compound, silence hung thicker than the dust. The once strong man, known for his calm wisdom, now lay in his hut, fighting for every breath. His coughs were deep, tearing through the night, and his voice, when it came, was weak, as if his words were afraid to leave his mouth. "Mama," Ngozi asked one morning, her small hands folded nervously, "will Papa get well soon?" Nena looked at her daughter with a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. "He will," she said curtly, "if you all stay quiet and let me take care of him." She turned to Chinello, who stood at the doorway holding a calabash of water. "You," she snapped, "leave that there. I don't need your help near my husband. You'll only bring bad luck." Chinello froze. "Mama, I only came to—" "Don't call me that," Nena barked. "Did I give birth to you? Go and sweep the yard." Chinello lowered her eyes. "Yes, ma." As she turned to leave, she glanced toward the hut. The curtain made of raffia hung half open, and for a brief moment, she saw her father's hand trembling on the mat. Her chest tightened. That night, the wind howled through the compound, scattering ashes from the fireplace. The moon hid behind a thin mist, and the udala tree creaked softly. Chinello sat by the kitchen wall, listening. Each cough from her father's hut struck her heart like a drumbeat of fear. She wanted to go in, to hold his hand, to ask if he needed water, but Nena had forbidden anyone from entering. Even Obina and Ngozi were kept away. "If you step inside that hut without my word," Nena had said, "you will meet my wrath. Do you hear me?" So they all kept their distance. By the third week, Okezi had stopped coming out at all. Nena went in each morning with a bowl of herbs and a wet cloth. She stayed long, and when she came out, she always said the same thing. "He is resting." But Chinello knew the smell of sickness. She had smelled it once when Mama Udoka's husband had fallen ill. It was a bitter, heavy smell that clung to the air long after the sick person had spoken their last word. That smell now hovered in the yard like a shadow. One evening, Chinello brought in firewood and found Obina sitting alone by the udala tree. His proud shoulders looked smaller than usual. "Have you seen him today?" he asked suddenly. She shook her head. "Mama said no one should go near." He sighed. "I think Papa wants to see you." Her eyes widened. "What makes you say that?" "I heard him call your name last night," Obina said quietly. "Twice!" Chinello's heart pounded. "And what did Mama do?" "She told him to rest," he replied. "But—" She sounded angry. Chinello's breath trembled. "I cannot wait anymore." That night, when everyone had gone to sleep, Chinello lay awake, staring at the dark outline of the kitchen wall. The air was cold, the kind of cold that made the ground hard underfoot. The moon had returned, soft and pale, painting silver shapes across the compound. The sound of her father's cough came again, weak, fading, yet still there. She stood quietly, wrapped her old shawl around her shoulders, and stepped out. The sand beneath her feet was cold and fine. Each step felt louder than it should, but the compound slept deeply. Even the goats were silent. When she reached the hut, she hesitated at the doorway. A single lantern burned faintly inside, its flame dancing weakly against the wall. She lifted the raffia curtain and slipped in. The smell hit her first. Herbs, sweat, and something heavier, like wet wood left too long in the rain. Her father lay on the mat, thinner than she remembered, his chest rising and falling in shallow rhythm. His eyes were half open, but unfocused, as if they had been watching something far away. "Papa," she whispered. He turned his head slowly. "Chinello?" Yes, Papa, it's me. He smiled faintly, his lips dry and cracked. You came. I had to, she said, kneeling beside him. Mama said no one should disturb you, but I couldn't stay away. I brought you water. She held the small calabash to his lips. He sipped slowly, his hand trembling as he reached for hers. Your hands, he murmured, still gentle, like hers. Like who, Papa? He swallowed hard, his breath catching. Like your mother's. A tear slipped down Chinello's cheek. You mean Mama Obianuju? He nodded weakly. Yes, her. Silence filled the small room, heavy and fragile. Outside, the wind rustled the dry leaves like distant whispers. Papa, Chinello said softly, why won't Mama Nena let us see you? He turned his head slightly, his eyes glistening with something deeper than pain. Because she fears truth, my daughter. Truth? She repeated, frowning. He coughed violently, the sound tearing through his chest. Chinello held him gently, steadying his head. When the coughing stopped, he took a long breath, his voice barely a whisper. There is something you must know before I go. Go where? She whispered. Papa, you will get better. I can... No, he interrupted softly. My body knows its end, but my spirit cannot rest with this lie buried. Chinello's eyes widened, her hands cold around his. What lie, Papa? He stared at her for a long time as if trying to gather strength from her face. You are my true daughter, my firstborn. She froze. What do you mean? He closed his eyes for a moment, a single tear escaping the corner. When your mother, Obianuju, gave birth to you, I was not at home. The labor was long, and she died before I returned. Nena was there. She was her friend then, helping with the birth. When I came back, she told me you had died too. Chinello's mouth went dry. Died? Yes, I buried Obianuju myself, believing her words. He paused, gasping for breath. Months later, Nena came to me with a baby girl. She said the child's parents had died in her village and that she would raise the girl if I allowed her. I did not know. I did not know it was you. Chinello's whole body trembled. She lied to you? He nodded weakly. For years. She feared that your mother's memory would live too strong through you. She thought, if I never knew, her place in this house would be safe. When you grew older and began to resemble your mother, I started to suspect. But by then, it was too late. The truth came to me only when one of the women who helped that night confessed before her death. Tears streamed freely down Chinello's face. Why didn't you tell me, Papa? Why did you let her treat me like this? His voice broke. Because I was a coward, my child. I feared losing peace in my house. I thought silence would protect everyone. But silence is a thief. It steals truth, love, and forgiveness. She shook her head, crying. All these years, I thought I was nothing. A servant, an orphan. He reached weakly for her hand. No, my daughter, you are my blood. My first breath of joy. The gods have punished me enough for my silence. I cannot leave without begging you to forgive me. Chinello bent low, tears falling onto his chest. Papa, don't say that. Please don't go. I forgive you. Just live. Please. He smiled faintly, his eyes soft. You have your mother's heart, so gentle, even in pain. He coughed again, a deep, final cough that seemed to draw everything out of him. His hand squeezed hers once, weakly. Leave kindly, Chinello, he whispered. Do not let bitterness take root in you. Promise me. I promise, Papa. His lips moved again, forming words she could barely hear. Tell the world who you are, my daughter. Then his hand went still. The room became terribly quiet. The lantern flickered, the shadows trembling along the walls. Chinello stayed kneeling beside him, her face pressed to his chest, listening for a heartbeat that was no longer there. Papa, she whispered, shaking him gently. Papa, wake up, please. But the silence answered. Outside, the wind had stopped. The moonlight fell softly through the raffia curtain, resting on father and daughter, one gone, one broken, but breathing. Minutes passed before Chinello rose. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes hollow but glowing with a strange calm. She touched his forehead, closed his eyes, and whispered, "Rest, Papa. The truth will not die with you." As she stepped out of the hut, the world felt different, colder, heavier, yet somehow clearer. The udala tree swayed gently, and the harmattan wind brushed against her cheek as if carrying her father's last breath. She looked up at the moon and whispered, "Mama," he told me, "I know who I am now." And though grief filled her chest, there was strength in her tears, a strength born not from hate, but from the truth finally spoken in the quiet heart of night. The drums spoke first, low and steady, the way a heart beats when grief sits on it. Dust rose off the path like breath as mourners filed into Okezi's compound. The udala tree spread its arms over them, its leaves still, as if even the wind dared not move on a day like this. Mats lay side by side for those who could not stand. Calabashes clinked softly as water passed from hand to hand. Women covered their heads with dark cloths. Men stood with folded arms, faces carved with silence. Nena wept as though the sky had cracked open inside her. She threw herself at the doorstep, rolled in the dust, slapped her chest with an open palm, and cried, "Okezi, my husband, why did you leave me? Who will hold this house now?" Her voice rose and fell, strong enough to shake the goats in their pen. People nodded, some in pity, some in doubt. A few women exchanged quick looks. "Her tears are many," one of them murmured. "Her eyes are dry," another replied, almost under her breath. Chinello moved quietly among the mourners, carrying water, straightening mats, guiding old men to shade. Her wrapper was simple, her face washed clean, her eyes swollen from nights without sleep. When she bowed to greet the elders, they saw exhaustion and something else, a new firmness that seemed to root her feet to the ground. Mama Udoka took her hand and squeezed it. "My child, hold yourself." "I am trying," Chinello whispered. The burial passed like a long afternoon that refused to end. The men dug, the women sang, the elder spoke. When the last handful of earth fell, a stillness spread across the yard, a hush that felt like the silence after thunder. The people drifted away in clusters, leaving behind footprints, scattered leaves, and the odor of sweat and sorrow. As the compound emptied, Nena stood, brushed dust from her arms, and wiped her face with a clean cloth. Her voice, when it came, lost its wail and found its edge. "Obina," she called, "lock the yam barn." Obina hurried to obey, chest swollen with the new weight of being the man of the house, or what he imagined that meant. He carried himself like a young lion, eyes proud, chin raised. Ngozi followed her mother like a shadow, glancing at Chinello now and then, as if expecting her to vanish into thin air. From the corner by the kitchen, Chinello watched without a word. The lantern from the night before still stood on the shelf where she had left it. Its glass was smudged with her thumbprint. The world she knew had shifted, all in one breath, and yet the broom still leaned where it always leaned, and the clay pots sat where they always sat. She wrapped her arms around herself and waited. Near evening, the compound gates creaked closed. Nena turned to those who remained. Two aunties from her mother's side, a lean uncle called Nwogu, Obina, Ngozi, and Chinello. She lifted her chin. "From today," she said, "we must keep this house safe. People will come with hungry eyes. We must not open our doors to gossip or thieves." Nwogu cleared his throat. "My sister, the elders will meet soon for the sharing of property. We must respect custom." "We will respect custom," Nena replied, smiling with no warmth. "Custom says the son inherits his father's compound. Custom says the yam barn and farmland pass to him. We will do as our fathers did. Obina glanced at his mother, pleased. He folded his arms, trying to look older. Ngozi leaned against the doorway, chewing sugar cane and looking bored. Chinello kept her gaze low. And the girls? Nwogu asked, nodding towards Ngozi and Chinello. Girls will marry, Nena said. Girls will find their husbands' houses. The words landed in the yard like stones. Chinello felt the ground tip for a moment, then steady under her feet. She could still taste the last words her father had given her, the ones that had changed her blood from water to fire. You are my true daughter, my firstborn. The truth pressed against her lips, asking to be named. Yet she held it, holding it the way she had held late-night embers, carefully, so it would not die. Tomorrow, Nena continued, Obina will follow me to the barn. We will count what is there. From next week, he will harvest from the far ridge. The lower field is for planting new cuttings. We must not let people think this house is leaderless. Chinello lifted her head. What of my father's words? Nena's eyes turned on her, sharp as a blade. Your father is gone. The men will speak. You will listen. Chinello said nothing more. She turned to the kitchen, fetched water, and washed her hands of dust. That night, sleep did not visit her. She lay near the cooling ashes, listening to the house breathe, counting the stretches between wind and owl call, remembering how her father's fingers had tightened over hers before they went still. In the dark, she spoke the truth aloud, not loudly, not whispering, just steady. I am Okezi's daughter. Morning came with dry light and restless feet. People began to arrive again. Neighbors carrying food, cousins trying to be helpful, old men wanting details, old women offering counsel whether wanted or not. The compound swelled and shrank as the day wore on. In the afternoon, Ifeoma slipped in quietly and found Chinello rinsing pots. Are you eating at all? Ifeoma asked. I will later, Chinello said, though she had not eaten since dawn. Ifeoma looked at her friend's hands. You shake, she said softly. Only a little, Chinello replied, and tried to smile. By late day, a message arrived. The elders would sit in 2 days. The news carried a gravity that settled over the yard like another layer of dust. Nena put on her calm face, the one that hid hunger. She moved from corner to corner, choosing which words to say and which to hold back. When the family sat to eat, she set Obina's share before him first, then Ngozi's, and at last Chinello's. The leaf of Chinello's wrap held less soup than the others, but her stomach was not interested in counting. That night, when the compound quieted, a soft knock touched the kitchen door. Chinello lifted her head. The door eased open, and Ekene slid in, face shadowed. You should not be here, she said, startled but not angry. I came to greet, he replied, voice low. I could not come earlier. Men crowd the yard. I did not want trouble. Chinello looked at his eyes and saw honest worry. Thank you. He stepped closer. There are whispers, he said. They say your stepmother is closing her fist around everything. She is doing what she has always wanted, Chinello murmured. Will you let her? He asked. You have a right. My right has never lived in her house, Chinello said, the corners of her mouth lifting without joy. But the elders will sit. Ekene searched her face. If you need me to speak, no, she said gently. Not yet, but thank you. He nodded, put something on the low shelf, a small bundle wrapped in clean cloth, and left the way he came. When she opened the bundle, she found dried fish and a handful of kola nuts, plain gifts, thoughtful ones. She pressed the cloth to her cheek before tucking it away. The day of the meeting arrived with a quiet that felt like the pause before rain. Men from the kindred gathered under the udala tree. Mats were spread. Stools formed a half circle. The oldest elder, a man called Nyameka, sat in the center. His beard was white, his eyes clear. Beside him sat Okeke, short and stubborn, who loved rules more than people. Next to them, Nwosu, who always listened first. Several others filled the circle. Women watched from the edges, pretending to sweep, to peel cassava, to nurse babies, while their ears drank every word. Nena greeted each elder with a deep bow and a careful smile. "You are welcome," she said. "We thank you for coming. Our house respects your wisdom." Obina stood behind her, shoulders square. Ngozi hovered near the doorway, restless as a small bird. Chinello came last and sat on a low stool at the edge of the shade. She greeted the elders in a voice steady and soft. Naimeka looked at her with interest that did not show on his mouth. "Let us speak," Nemeka said. "The man Okezi has gone to his father's. May his spirit find the cool tree. We will set his house in order. We follow custom. We also listen for fairness." Okeke cleared his throat. "Custom is clear. The son takes the compound. The yam barn and farm follow the lineage." Nena nodded quickly. "Yes, that is what I have said since the first day." Nwosu lifted a hand. "Custom speaks broadly. We must also hear the house." Naimeka's gaze moved from face to face. "Let each speak." Nena stepped forward at once. Words flowed from her like palm wine from a full gourd. She praised her late husband, talked of years of labor, of children raised, of nights without sleep. She cried a little at the right places. She spoke of danger, men who would steal, relatives who would invade, tongues that would bite. She finished with a simple statement. "Obina is the son. He will hold the compound. He will protect his sister Ngozi until she marries well. The other girl," she flicked a hand without looking, "came to us as a child with no people. We fed her. We clothed her. She will be sent to my people to learn weaving. Later, if she finds a husband, may the gods bless her." A murmur ran along the mats like a small wind through dry grass. Eyes shifted. Some nodded. Some frowned. Nemeka's face remained still. "Let the children speak," he said. "Obina first." Obina lifted his chin. "I will care for this house," he declared. "I will harvest the far ridge and plant the lower field. I will build a new fence. My father would want that." "And your sisters?" Naimeka asked. "I will provide," Obina said promptly. "Ngozi is my sister. The other girl is a stranger who found shelter here." Ngozi giggled nervously and then hid her mouth in her wrapper. Silence passed to Chinello like a calabash offered with two hands. She stood slowly and faced the elders. The yard tilted again, not with fear this time, but with the sense that a step once avoided could no longer be delayed. "I greet you," she began. "I thank you for coming. I will not use many words." Nena stiffened but said nothing. Chinello looked at Naimeka, then at Okeke, then at the ground for a breath, gathering strength the way the earth gathers water after a hard sun. "I am not a stranger," she said, voice even. "I am Okezi's daughter, his firstborn." The air changed. It did not move, but it changed. Eyes widened. Okeke set his jaw. Nena laughed, a short, cold sound. "Elders, you hear?" Nena said. "Grief makes the tongue wild." Chinello did not turn to her. She faced the circle. "My father told me before he died. He said I was the child of his first wife, Obianuju. He said that after my mother passed, this woman told him I had died too. Later, she brought me back as an orphan. He begged me to forgive him for his silence." Okeke slapped his thigh. "Where is the proof? Words in the night? The dead cannot be called to testify." Nwosu leaned forward. "Let her finish." Chinello took a breath. "There is a scar on my left shoulder, under the bone. My mother's sister, Auntie Ankem, saw it when I was a baby. She said Obianuju had the same mark. She told Mama Udoka once at the stream. Ask her. Ask also the old midwife, Mama Nwoye, who helped in that labor. She knew the truth. Before she died last year, she told her granddaughter what happened that night. Send for the girl. She lives by the 3 mango trees on the far path. My father did not lie. He had no strength left for lies." A wave of whispers rippled through the waters at the edges. Nena's face lost some color, then gained it back all at once. She pointed at Chinello. Lies, she spit. Jealousy. She wants to tear my house apart. She wants to shame me while my husband's body is still warm in the soil. Nana Emeka raised a palm, quieting the yard. He turned to Mama Udoka, who had quietly taken a place near the mortar with a broom in her hand. Woman, he said, you are old enough to choose truth even when it bites. Speak what you know. Mama Udoka stepped forward, eyes wet, mouth firm. I knew Obianuju, she said. I held her hand at the market many times. I saw this girl, she pointed at Chinello, grow with the same look in her eyes. Years ago at the stream, Auntie Ankem told me the baby of that night bore a scar in the same place as her sister, Obianuju. She cried and said a bad thing had entered the house. I told her to speak. She said fear tied her tongue. I have waited for this day. Okeke frowned. This is smoke, not wood. We need wood. Nwosu rubbed his chin. Send for Mama Nwoye's granddaughter. Nena stepped forward quickly. Why dig into graves? The dead should sleep. Nnaemeka looked at her. If the dead sleep on a lie, the living grow crooked. Nena's mouth thinned, but she kept quiet. A boy was sent running. The compound settled into a holding of breath. Obina shifted from foot to foot. Ngozi stared at the ground, chewing the inside of her cheek. Chinello stood still, palms open at her sides, as if ready to receive either a blessing or a slap. The boy returned with a girl in a faded wrapper, shy and nervous. She bowed awkwardly, twisting her fingers. Your name? Nnaemeka asked. Oluchi, she whispered, daughter of Nwoye's son. Nnaemeka's voice softened. Your grandmother died last year. Oluchi nodded, eyes bright with sudden tears. Yes, sir. Before she died, did she speak of a birth in this house long ago? Oluchi looked at Nena, then at Chinello, then at the elders. Words tumbled out fast, as if she had been holding them in her mouth for months. She told me she went to help a woman, Obianuju, the night she gave birth. The woman died, but the baby lived. My grandmother washed the child, saw a small scar on the shoulder, and wrapped her. She stepped outside to call the husband. When she came back, the baby was gone. Another woman, this one, she pointed at Nena with a quick darting finger, told her the child did not breathe. My grandmother cried and cried. Years after, she saw the child again in this compound, older with the same scar. She told me she feared to speak, that a great wrong had been done. The yard exhaled all at once. Someone at the back hissed softly in pity. Okeke's shoulders sagged like a man who had been holding a basket too long. Nwosu nodded, slow and sad. Nena stood like a tree hit by sudden wind. Her eyes flashed. These are stories told by a girl who wants attention, she snapped. Old women say many things before death. Are we children that we believe every last breath? Nnaemeka looked at her for a long time. Then he turned to Chinello. Show us the scar. Chinello untied her wrapper at the shoulder and slid the cloth just enough. A small crescent, pale and familiar, rested under the bone. It was not loud. It did not shout. It simply existed, the way truth does when left alone. Silence rounded the yard again. A mourning dove cooed from the udala tree, as if to fold the moment into its throat. Nnaemeka stood. This house carries a wound, he said, voice low but strong. A child was hidden in her father's home. A woman told a lie and shaped a life with it. The dead man cannot correct us, but the living can choose a straighter road. Okeke cleared his throat and found new words. Custom is not a fence for thieves. The firstborn is the firstborn. Nwosu nodded. The son will inherit as the son, but the firstborn's place cannot be swept away. Nena's body tightened. You want to cut my children from their father's harvest. No, Nnaemeka replied. We want to seat each person where they belong. He pointed to the compound. This yard is Okezi's house. It belongs to his line, not to a single throat. Obina will be keeper of the compound with the elders' eyes on him. The yam barn will open to all rightful children, Chinello and Obina together, to take measure by season, not by anger. The far ridge will be divided. 2 plots to the son, 1 to the firstborn daughter, as fairness requires when a father dies without setting his own words. Ngozi will have palm stands counted for her marriage gifts. The lower field stays for seed, governed by both, with Nemeka's mark on the tally stick. He turned to Nena. And you, widow, will sit in this house under the protection of the kindred, as our custom grants, but you will not send the firstborn away like a beggar. If you try, the kindred will carry you to your mother's gate and sweep your footprints from this yard. A humming rose from the edges of the yard, approval with the rustle of leaves. Mama Udoka wiped her eyes. Ifeoma, who had slipped in and crouched by the fence, covered her smile with both hands. Nena swayed where she stood, rage struggling with calculation. She looked at Obina, whose face had gone from triumph to confusion, then to something like fear. She looked at Ngozi, whose mouth hung open. She looked at Chinello, who met her gaze without malice, only with an exhaustion that had no room for more hurt. You have poured sand in my soup, Nena said to the elders, voice trembling. You shame me in my husband's yard. Nemeka sighed. You shamed yourself long ago. Her mouth opened and closed, then opened again. She turned to Chinello, eyes hard. You think you have won. You think beauty and quiet words make you strong. Chinello's voice was gentle. No, it is truth that makes me stand, not beauty, not words. Nena's chest rose and fell. For a moment, sorrow crossed her face, quick as a bird's shadow. Then it was gone. She lifted her chin. Do what you will, she said. I will survive. The elders marked decisions on a palm front, tying knots to remember. Nwosu measured steps from the udala tree to the edges of the lower field, speaking numbers under his breath. Okeke checked the yam barn latch as if it could lie. Men murmured, women exhaled, children ran underfoot, already forgetting. As the meeting broke, Anemeka beckoned Chinello. She stepped forward, hands folded. You will remain here for now, he said kindly. This is your father's house. If later you choose to marry, you will go with honor. If you choose to stay, you will plant your share and eat from your work. Chinello bowed. I hear and I thank you. He looked into her face. Forgiveness is a long road. Walk it when your feet are ready. She nodded, feeling suddenly the weight leave her shoulders just enough for breath to return fully. When the elders left, the yard felt larger. The udala tree threw a wider shade. Obina stood alone by the barn. He watched Chinello approach and did not move away. For a moment, they were simply 2 young people who had lost a father on the same day. I did not know, he said finally, voice small. I know, she replied. He looked at the ground. Will you take everything from me now? She shook her head. I will take only my place. He nodded slowly and turned the key in the barn door. We will count together, he said, not as a promise, not as surrender, but as a beginning shaped by necessity. Near the kitchen, Ngozi sat on a low stool, plucking the frayed hem of her wrapper. She glanced up when Chinello passed. You have a scar? She asked, half curious, half afraid. Yes, Chinello said. Ngozi swallowed. I used to say cruel things. I remember, Chinello replied gently. Will you hate me? Ngozi whispered. Chinello paused, then touched her on the shoulder. No, we all drank from what we were given. Now we will drink from cleaner water. Ngozi blinked fast and nodded, relief like light on her face. From the doorway, Nena watched them. She held a bowl in both hands as if it might steady her. Lines had carved themselves deeper into her cheeks in a single afternoon. She did not speak. She turned and disappeared into the shadow of her hut, the bowl still steady, the howl she did not release, curling back into her throat like smoke inside a closed pot. Later, when dusk smudged the edges of the compound and the first evening stars blinked awake, Chinello carried a small calabash of water to her father's mound and knelt. The dust was soft there, warm from the day. She poured a little water onto the ground. Papa, she said, they heard me. I am not sending you my anger. I am sending you my promise. I will plant. I will harvest. I will keep my heart from becoming stone. The udala leaves rustled as if someone had walked through them with careful feet. She listened, then rose and turned back to the yard that was now finally hers in name as well as memory. Inside the kitchen, she lit the small fire. The ember woke, red and faithful. She set a pot over it, added water, leaves, a little salt. The smell rose and filled the room. She hummed a song she had kept from a night when the roof leaked and the soup was hot and a father's voice trembled with love. The tune was simple. It carried well. Outside, the compound settled, not peaceful yet, but beginning to learn how. The widow's deception had been named. The knots had been tied. Work would follow, and arguments, and days when silence would be easier than truth. Still, the straight road had been found, and even if feet stumbled on it, the path would hold. Chinello tasted the soup, nodded, and set 3 bowls. 1 for herself, 1 for Ngozi, if she came, and 1 for Obina, if he found the courage to sit. She did not set a 4th. She did not need to. The space beside the fire belonged to a memory that was no longer a secret, and in that gentle clearing, her future began to breathe. The morning broke quietly, the sun hanging low and pale, wrapped in harmattan dust. The air was sharp and dry, carrying the smell of wood smoke and old secrets. Chickens scurried around the yard, scratching at the dusty earth, but the compound itself waited as if holding its breath. From the kitchen, Chinello poured water into a clay pot. Her hands were steady, though her heart was not. Today, the elders would come, men whose gray hair carried the weight of many seasons, whose words could break or bind families. It had been 3 market weeks since her father's burial, and whispers had filled the village like restless spirits. Some said the widow planned to claim all. Others said Okezi had left something behind, a sealed gourd hidden from her hands. Chinello had heard it all in silence, her face calm even when her spirit churned. She had not slept well. Dreams of her father's weak voice returned again and again. "Tell the world who you are," he had said. Those words had become a fire she could not quench. Nena's voice cut through the quiet morning. "Ngozi, go and sweep the front of the hut. Obina, polish the elders' stools. Let no one say this house is unclean when they arrive." Her tone was sharp, her steps heavy with importance. Her wrapper was tied tightly, her coral beads bright against her neck. She looked like a woman preparing for battle. Chinello carried the pot toward the udala tree, where the elders would sit. Nena saw her and frowned. "Why are you standing there? Do you think the elders came for you?" "I am only setting water for them," Chinello said softly. "Leave it and go inside," Nena snapped. "Your presence will bring bad luck." Chinello lowered the pot carefully to the ground and stepped back, but she did not go far. She stood under the shade of the tree, watching the dust on the road beyond the fence, waiting. The sound of footsteps came first, measured, firm, unhurried. Then voices deep and steady. The harmattan had begun to lose its hard edge when the village spoke as one body, and the news spread into the hills and out beyond the raffia fences. People told the story at the market, at the palm wine joint, by the stream, in the shade behind the church, and along the red paths that stitched one hamlet to another. The truth had awakened in Okezi's compound, and it had a daughter's face. At first, Nena tried to stand firm. She tied her wrapper twice and kept her chin high. She moved across the yard in quick steps, daring anyone to meet her eyes. But whispers followed her like shadows. When she went to the market, women looked down at their baskets. When she fetched water, even the girls who used to greet her with bent knees found their hands suddenly busy. The old men who used to praise her tidy mortar and well-swept yard began to look past her shoulder, as if searching for a fly in the air. On the third morning after the elders read Okezi's letter, Nena packed a shallow basket with 2 wrappers, a small mirror, a comb with missing teeth, and a string of beads that had belonged to her mother. She called Obinna and Ngozi to the doorway of the main hut. "We will go to my brother's house in Umuike for a while," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes moved too fast. Ngozi looked at the ground, then at Chinello, who was standing by the udala tree with a hoe in her hand. "Will we come back?" she whispered. "We will see," Nena answered. "Take your sandals. We will leave before the sun climbs." Obinna shifted his weight, a shame he could not hold showing on his face. "Mama," he said, "the elders said I should stay and work with Chinello to keep the compound." Nena stared at him as if she had never seen him before. "You will choose her words over mine?" "I will choose the truth," he replied, and his voice surprised even him. "It is still our father's house. I will not run from it." For a moment it seemed she might spit out a curse. Instead she swallowed hard, blinked, and tightened the flap of the basket. "Then be men, both of you," she said to her children, though her eyes fell on Chinello. "If you fall, you will not find my hands to lift you." She turned, lifted the basket to her head, and walked through the gate without looking back. Ngozi hesitated for a breath, then ran after her mother, tears bright on her cheeks. Obinna remained where he was, breathing like someone learning to use new lungs. Chinello did not move at first. The yard felt vast, the hut behind her heavy with memory, the udala tree above her like a witness. She set the hoe aside and walked to the gate, watching dust rise around the feet of the 2 figures growing small on the path. "Go in peace," she said softly, not sure if she meant it for them, for herself, or for the years that would not return. By noon, the compound had become a hive. Aunties arrived with advice, young men came to repair the fence, children gathered palm kernels from the ground, and the elders sent a messenger with a carved staff as a sign that their word still covered the house. Mama Udoka came with a pot of pepper soup and the sharp look of a woman who understood both grief and relief. "Eat," she told Chinello. "You cannot hold a house with an empty stomach." Chinello smiled for the first time in days, a quick flash of light across her face. "I will eat," she promised, and then added, "but not alone." She sent a child to call the widow living by the termite mound, the one whose roof let in the rain. She sent another to fetch the twin boys who had lost their father in the last planting season. She sent a third to invite Ifeoma and her mother. When they came, shy at first, she set bowls before them and waited until each had eaten. Only then did she take a sip from her own spoon. The soup was hot and full of life. "I will need help to count the yams," she said when the bowls were empty. "You will have it," Ifeoma said, grinning. "I can count faster than Obinna." "I heard," Obinna said from the barn, though there was laughter in his voice. He came out holding a chalked tally stick and a piece of rag to wipe his hands. "We will count once for the hungry and again for seed." "You see," Mama Udoka said with satisfaction, "a house can learn a new song." That afternoon, Chinello entered the main hut for the first time as its keeper. The air inside was cool and faint, with the smell of herbs and smoke. She paused at the doorway, heart loud in her chest, and then stepped in. On the wall hung Okezi's staff, the one he carried during festivals. Beside it sat the clay pot that had belonged to Obianuju, simple, round, and beautiful in its age. Chinello went to it and ran her fingers along the rim, feeling a small chip where time had tasted it. "I am here," she said to the room, "not as a visitor, as a daughter." She opened the small chest at the foot of the bed and found folded wrappers, a string of old cowries, and a wrapped bundle of papers tied with palm fiber. She did not open the papers yet. Instead, she cleaned the floor, shook out the mats, and burned a pinch of dried leaves to chase the tired smell of sickness. When she finished, she stood by the doorway and breathed deeply. The hut seemed to lift its shoulders and settle them again, as if relieved. The next days were full of new work. Chinello woke before the first cock crow and crossed the yard with a calabash on her head, her feet silent, her steps even. She drew water at the stream with Ifeoma, who told her new market jokes to make the path shorter. She measured seed yams with Obina in the morning and walked the far ridge at midday, where the soil cracked like old pots, and waited for rain. She visited the widow by the termite mound and hired 2 young boys to patch the woman's roof with palm leaves. She gathered the smallest children and taught them the song her father had hummed to her on the night of rain, a line that rose and fell like breath, simple and faithful. They learned it quickly and sang it as if they had always known it. The yam barn opened twice a week. People came with baskets and left with respect. Chinello took from the middle stacks, not the top where eyes could count too easily, and not the bottom where rot might hide. She made a list on a palm frond, names and measures, and hung it by the door where any person could see it. "Let no one say I am stealing," she told Obina. "Let the numbers protect us." He nodded, grateful for clear lines he could stand behind. Some visitors brought trouble with their mouths. One man said, "You are generous today, but will you remember us after the rains?" Chinello answered, "If you plant, I will remember." Another woman asked, "Will you give your land to strangers when you marry?" Chinello replied, "This land is not a jar I can carry away. It is a place to stand and a place to feed. My husband, if he comes, will learn that." Ekene came on the 4th day with bundles of cassava sticks and a shy smile he could not hide. He greeted Chinello with both hands, then greeted Obina with a shoulder bump that men use to test the borders of friendship. "I brought these for the lower field," he said. "The cuttings are strong." "They look fine," Obina said, pretending to examine them with deep wisdom. Chinello tried to speak, but found her voice filling with the sounds of other things. She cleared her throat and said, "Thank you, the lower field needs a friend." Ekene laughed. "Then let me be that friend." He worked with them until the sun sat halfway down the sky, his body moving in rhythm with the land. When he left, he did not look back often, but when he did, he found Chinello watching him. She would look away quickly, then smile to herself, and the udala leaves above seemed to smile too. Naemeka came by at dusk with a gourd of palm wine and the slow steps of a man who had carried many decisions across many years. He sat on the low stool under the udala tree, sipped, and studied the yard without speaking. After a while, he said, "You clean a wound by washing it, not by shouting at it." Chinello nodded. "I am washing." "Good," he replied. "Do not wash away this scar. Scars remember, and remembrance keeps pride from spoiling the harvest." She took his words into her chest and stored them where no wind could reach. News of Nena arrived in pieces. Some said she moved in with her brother. Others said she had gone farther to a town where no one knew her name. A woman at the market told Ifeoma that Nena now sold roasted plantains by the road, her head wrapped low, her chin down. "She does not look people in the eyes," the woman whispered. "Shame is a heavy tray to balance." Chinello listened without smiling. "She is still the mother of my siblings," she said. "Do not rejoice over a broken bowl. It can cut your own hand." When Ngozi returned one afternoon with a small bundle of cloth and fear on her face, Chinello met her at the gate and pulled her into a long, quiet hug. Mama said I should stay away, Ngozi sobbed, but I could not. I missed you and Obinna. I missed the udala tree. I missed the smell of smoke in the kitchen when you sing. You are home, Chinello said, smoothing her hair. No one will chase you. You are your father's daughter too. In the days that followed, Ngozi learned to carry herself with less noise. She helped in the kitchen, laughed without cruelty, and followed Chinello to the stream where they walked like sisters who had been apart too long and were learning how to share stories without stepping on each other's words. At night, Ngozi would lie on a mat near the hearth and whisper questions into the dark. Do you hate Mama? She asked once. Chinello stared at the ember glow. No, she answered after a time. Hate is a hot coal. It burns the hand that holds it. What do you feel then? Sadness, Chinello said. And hope. Both can sit in one heart. Obinna worked hard, as if labor could straighten every crooked thing that had ever lived inside him. He rose early, checked the barn, walked the fields, and learned how to speak softly when he was wrong. One evening, he stood with Chinello by the fence, both of them watching the road where dust hung like a veil in the setting light. I used to call you a stranger, he said, words stiff with shame. I do not know if my mouth can ever repay what it said. Chinello touched his arm lightly. Then use your hands, she said. Hands can repair what mouths spoil. He nodded, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Tomorrow I will fix the hinge on the barn door. Good, she replied. The hinge squeaks like a gossip. They laughed, and the fence heard it and felt less tired. As the dry season stretched, the compound changed shape, not by magic, but by many small choices. Chinello sent palm oil to the old teacher who had gone blind the year before. She gave 4 seed yams to a family whose barn had been ravaged by rats. She lent her mortar to a woman whose husband had borrowed it and never returned it. When 2 boys fought over a bird's nest found in the palm frond pile, she told them a story about a bird that built 2 homes and lost both. They stared, wide-eyed, and shared the nest without more noise. Little by little, people began to say her name with respect that did not need a drum. The night rains came late that year, arriving as if unsure they were welcome. The first storm walked slowly across the sky, clearing its throat with distant thunder. Chinello stood by the main hut and let a few drops kiss her face. She thought of the night years ago when the roof leaked and her father hummed a tune to help her breathe. She closed her eyes and let the present wash the old ache without washing the memory away. Later, by the small fire, Ifeoma leaned close and whispered, "Do you think Ekene will bring kola nuts again?" Chinello's cheeks warmed. He comes to help with cuttings. Kola nuts can also be cut, Ifeoma teased, eyes bright. Chinello shook her head and laughed. Go and sleep. Your tongue is longer than the stream. I am only planning your happiness, Ifeoma declared, rising with mock dignity. I will plan my harvest, Chinello replied, still smiling. Happiness likes to find such people. On the night the moon lifted clear of the dust and hung like a clean bowl in the sky, Chinello entered the main hut alone. The house breathed around her. Walls, mats, shelves, the low table where Okezi once wrote his letter, the staff on the wall, the clay pot holding the quiet of many years. She lit a small lamp and sat cross-legged on the floor. Her hands rested on her lap, empty but full of feeling. She spoke aloud, each word slow and careful, as if laying stones across a stream. Father, I am learning to keep what you left, not only land, Also the way to look at people and see the soft place in them. I fail some days. I wake with pride in my mouth, or anger rising like smoke from hot oil. But I am trying. I am learning to open the door for peace, even when it arrives late. She turned to the clay pot, stroked its rim like a cheek. Mother, I wish I had heard your voice. They say you smiled with your eyes. They say your hands were steady. The world kept us apart, but I think you have been near me all my life. I hear you when I choose kindness. I see you when I pour water for the tired. A breeze moved through the doorway, soft as a breath. The flame quivered and then stood still. Chinello smiled and leaned back, listening to the night. The gate creaked. She heard Obina's steps, then his knock against the frame. Sister, he called gently, a word he had never used before with such ease. There are men at the gate asking if we will sell 2 bundles of stakes for their new farm. We will, she answered. Give them the cheaper price. They are starting. He hesitated. You are not angry? No, their field will feed someone one day. Let our profit be patience. He laughed under his breath. You are making me into a good man. I am not that strong, she said, smiling. Go and sleep. Tomorrow we will walk the far ridge. His steps retreated. The compound settled again. Crickets counted out the hours. A goat sighed in its sleep. Somewhere beyond the fence, a baby cried and then forgot that it had been sad. Chinello rose and went to the doorway. The moon spilled silver across the yard, catching the lines of the udala tree, tracing the curve of the mortar, warming the edges of the barn door. She stepped outside and seated herself on the low stool beside her mother's clay pot, which she had brought to the threshold so the night could bless it too. The pot's shadow sat beside her like a companion who knew all her stories and asked for none to be told again. Chinello, Ifeoma whispered from the kitchen corner, half a laugh in her voice, half a yawn. Will you stay up all night? I will rest soon, Chinello answered. Go inside, the dew is coming. Ifeoma stretched and disappeared, her footsteps soft through the doorway. Chinello lifted her face to the moon. Her eyes were wet, but not from pain alone. They shone with the kind of joy that lives in the same house as sorrow and does not chase it away, only shares the mat with it until both become quiet. She touched the clay pot again, and her mouth shaped the words that had held her together when the world tried to pull her apart. Truth may sleep for a while, but it never dies. The sentence moved out into the yard, rose into the udala leaves, and climbed into the open air. It drifted down the path where Nena had walked with her basket and settled on the roof of the widow by the termite mound. It followed the stream to where girls laughed and carried water on their heads, adding a calm to their steps. It reached the lower field where new cuttings waited for rain, and they seemed to stand taller, as if they had heard. In the months that followed, the rains came properly, washing the dust from leaves and the bad memory from corners. The far ridge answered with green. The yam mounds lifted like sleeping cattle. The barn filled with honest weight. Children grew solid again. Widows blessed the air beside their mouths as they passed the gate. Obina's hands became sure. Ngozi learned not only to weave, but to choose colors that made a mat sing. Ifeoma teased and worked, and sometimes, when the moon was small and laughter easy, fell quiet to let the night have its say. Ekene came with kola nuts when the first harvest looked certain, but that was another story with a gentler pace, a future that could wait for its own dawn. For now, the main hut had a keeper who did not fill it with fear. The compound learned how to hold joy without spilling it. And the village, remembering how easily a lie can grow into a forest, began to tell its children the tale of Okezi's house and the daughter who waited by a dying fire until truth found her. On a night when the stars were clear enough to count, Chinello sat again by the clay pot. The lamp burned low. The yard breathed. She touched the pot and thanked it for standing through the heat and the cold, for holding water and memory without asking for applause. Then she rested her head against the doorpost, closed her eyes, and let the quiet wrap her like a wrapper worn soft by many washings. In that quiet, it was easy to believe that love, like truth, can sleep long and still wake strong. It was easy to believe that even houses built on sorrow can learn the steps of gentle dancing. And it was easy to believe that somewhere beyond the Udala tree, where the night widens and the ancestors listen, two voices were smiling. The man who wrote a letter with a shaking hand, and the woman whose clay pot still kept the coolness of water, and that their smiles were resting on the face of their true daughter, risen at last to the place that had always been hers. The story of Chinello teaches that truth, no matter how long it is buried, will always find its way to the light. Lies may bring temporary comfort or power, but they rot the soul of the one who hides behind them. Through patience, humility, and kindness, Chinello shows that real strength lies not in revenge, but in forgiveness and integrity. Her endurance reminds us that goodness does not shout, it endures, and when the time is right, it rises quietly to claim its rightful place. In the end, justice and truth walk hand in hand, proving that truth may sleep for a while, but it never dies. Thank you so much for watching. Your love and support mean everything to me. If this story inspired you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones to spread the inspiration. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more interesting African stories. See you in the next video. Bye.